Hey guys, welcome back to Bloodline Brushworks, and this week we're finally going to put some paint on plastic. So what we're painting up is this Red Witch Initiate from Kingdom Death Monster. I'm going to show you how to make a beautiful red cloak as well as put some non-metallic metal finish on her shoulders and a little bit of bone as well. So let's jump over and check it out. So as I previously said, we're going to be painting this Red Witch, and I have her here primed and ready to go. With the theme of this expansion being the Red Witches and blood magic, naturally we're going to paint the cloak red. So we're going to need to think about an undercoat to establish the shadows in an interesting way. And there's a few different colors that you can go with that will probably get the job done. I chose purple, but dark red, browns, whether that's a cool or warm brown, green, and blue are perfectly acceptable as well. You'll notice I'm putting on multiple coats of this purple, and that's because we need to establish a solid base coat. If you don't do that, you can get these splotchiness, which I actually have happen a little bit in this one and have to fix with an airbrush, but can be easily fixed with a brush too. It just takes a little longer. You gotta cover those spots a little heavier than some of the other ones to make sure there's no bleed through. As we look to start building up our color towards the highlights, the main part of the highlight is going to be the true red color. I'm not going to push much further from there because I think if you get vibrancy in reds, you can really use just a nice solid red color to be the main part of your highlight. It makes it look softer, a little bit more velvety, and adds a vibrancy of interest to the piece as well. So we'll build up towards that red, and then we'll start looking to start a highlight color. But as we build up towards that highlight, we want to make sure that we take it slow in our layers so that we don't have to spend a million hours glazing because the tone shifts were so dramatic. I'm going to jump over to my airbrush to glaze, but you can absolutely do this with a brush, and it's very simple once you understand how to do it. So to get you started on how that works, you're going to go ahead and create a glaze consistency of the current layer you're working with on your wet palette. And then you're going to dry your brush off a little bit on that paper towel to get some of the water out of there, because you don't want this to go everywhere and you want to have maximum control. And your brush stroke is going to start in the previous layer and it's going to end at the transition line of the current layer. And you might have to do this a couple times to go ahead and get a transition that looks good to you. You can stop whenever it looks smooth enough to you. You don't have to make this perfect. You don't have to spend so much time that you're driving yourself crazy on this either. Once the transition looks smooth enough for you, go ahead and stop and move on to your next layer. Get it to where it looks good to you at tabletop level, and then move on. If you use an airbrush, I will leave a link in the description to an artist named Zumikito. He has a video about airbrush glazing that I learned from, and the technique is super easy and will leave almost flawless results once you really get a hold of it. It's a technique that lots of high-end painters like Sergio use, although their style is a little bit different, but as you'll see, it's applicable to a very high level of painting, so it'll grow with you as you grow if you want to learn that. Unfortunately, I lost some of the footage in the layering process, so I wanted to take the time and explain to you guys what's going on here. So basically what I'm doing is that first color that I put over the purple, I'm adding more and more of this red that I'm using that I want to be the final main color of the cloak before I do highlights. And I'm adding a little bit at a time. So what you get before my highlights is probably 5 to 6 layers of tone increase with this red to that base color. And then once we get to the solid red, then we can start our highlights. And to avoid pink, which can become chalky if you're using white, and can sometimes become chalky if you're using a color that has a lot of white in it, we will use a flesh color. And that will still have a little bit of that pinkish color, but it'll move away from a chalkiness. We can also add in some pigment powders, and that will help boost the vibrancy overall I have these Hera fluorescent pigments, and these really are a game changer when it comes to color boost. And as we continue to highlight, I want you to notice the direction of my brush strokes in a single area. They typically move the same direction always, and that's because I don't want to build up texture. I want to remain smooth because this is a material that I want to look very velvety and crisp. I also want you to notice where replacing the highlights is absolutely where the light would hit, but also we embellish it a little bit further outside of that area just to sell the effect that the light is hitting there. It'll help it pop a little bit more, and this is a trick that we do use in miniature painting when pushing highlights or any special effects in order to get the eye to pick it up in a better way just because of how small our canvas is. As we're highlighting, as I finish that first layer of highlights, I'm going to go back with a black wash, and it's just black paint and some water mixed to a consistency that allows me to operate in a wash type of way. And what that's going to do is it's going to put the shadow back into the parts that are deep and overlapping with each other on this chainmail and a shoulder, or scale mail, I guess is more what it is. And that'll also bring down the contrast and make it not so stark and even it out a little bit. And then after that, we'll go back and we'll start hitting it with highlights once again until we get to that final highlight. And then that's really going to make this stuff pop. Later on, I do add a slight red filter, just really watering down that red color of the cape once again, and adding that over top of it in 2 layers just to put a very slight bit of red in there. And you won't really see it unless you really look. But what that will do is allow that non-metallic metal steel to kind of come back into the environment of the red cape by having a very subtle reflection of its color in it. As I move to the face, I keep it simple. I just use a base coat of flesh tone, and then I used Gilliman Flesh to go ahead and darken it down a little bit, and then just highlighted with that same dark flesh color the key features to make the face pop a little bit. I moved on to the face band and painted this with a darker gray to move up towards a white. One of the tricks with white is you never want to start with white. Go ahead and pick a gray of some sort and then move up from there. You want your highest highlights on white to be white if you want to go that bright. And then finally, we will work on the bone, the little crow's skull that's on her chest. And this again is pretty simple. We're just going to use birch, get it a solid color, and then we're going to go ahead and wash it, so to speak, with the contrast paint, the skeleton horde. And then from there, we'll highlight it back up and call it a day. And with that, we finished the Red Witch Initiate. I hope that you enjoyed this paint along and got something from it, maybe learned something. If you did, or even if you didn't, leave a comment below and let me know what you think and any future content ideas that you may have. And I will see you in the next video. And until then, remember, turn that gray into glory.